Now, to bring in our next guest, there's only one way to do it, and that is to go to a tweet that was presented from his outstanding account at @FSitake. Follow it now. Fesi Sitake says, last night, there needs to be a hygiene standard for all flights, and if you don't meet that hygiene standard, you are kicked off the plane. He continues, I didn't think I could hold my breath for 2 hours, but I just did.
That's a long time to hold your breath. Wow.
Fesi, I hope you've caught your breath by now. He joins us on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline. Deseret First, your values, your timeline, your financial future. Fesi, how you feeling after that adventure?
Man, with God, all things are possible. So I held it for 2 hours, and I'm back. I'm healthy and ready to go. So.
Where were you flying?
I was flying from California back to Utah. So before that, I went from D.C. to California. So thank goodness it wasn't on that.
Oh man!
Oh my goodness!
5 hour.
Yeah, it was an under 2 hour flight, just barely, and so I was able to do it. You know, there's times in your life where your character, certain traits get tested: humility, discipline, patience, charity. So I guess I'll look at that experience as one of those moments.
There's got to be like some pocket deodorant available for all that the flight attendants can bring by and be like, sir, as a courtesy, would you please use this for a moment?
How do you tactfully do that?
I don't know.
Though, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe
That's
it's a requirement.
great idea.
Yeah. Maybe it's a requirement for all passengers. Who knows?
Forget the snack mix and the cookies. Like, bring some toothpaste and some deodorant. That's a great idea.
Great. And then someone's allergic to it, and they have a reaction. You're in the air. You have to ground in Kansas City. Like, come on. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
So I know you guys got to get stuff, but the D.C. to California flight, the guy in front of me did drink so much that he just threw up all over the floor.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
This is the worst experience of your life ever in terms of air travel.
We better get something out of this recruiting trip, or I'm gonna be angry.
What? So, do you cover DC and California? What areas of the country do you cover?
I have the whole Inland Empire, which is basically southeast of LA and inside that mountain range that separates Orange County. So that's kind of my area. It's where I serve my mission. But then there's times where we'll just fly out and spot recruit and see a guy from our position or a guy who we've got a good relationship with. And so during this period, we can't talk to those guys a lot, but it's good to go, show face and see some of these coaches. So, but my area is that part of California.
That's been a hotbed, specifically Fontana. We've been able to get Devon Blackman, Jamal Williams, Sione Taki, Tyler Algier, right?
Aleva Hifo.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So Fontana's like the spot, right, among many others. It seems like there's a lot of good talent in that area, Fesi. So I guess how hard is your job in that area?
It's not hard. It's not hard to find kids. It's just hard to make sure that we have the right fit and that those kids are gonna really, really enjoy being here and want to be here. You know what I mean? And that's not so hard. It's just the pool does shrink a little bit, but I love it. I'm good. I'm glad I got a good pool of kids to recruit.
You've got some dudes, namely Aleva Hifo and company, in your wide receiver core right now. So what type of receiver are you looking for to help bolster that group?
If you can play, you can play. And it's interesting. I was talking to a couple of scouts at the pro day just recently, and there was a common theme in some of the ones I was talking to is that they're not so much. There's a trend going towards that 6 foot to 6'2" receiver. It's not so much the 6'4", 6'5" guy that you're just now. Granted, if you can get a freak at that size, that's great. And when they come along, pounce on that thing. And then everyone who's a little bit smaller in stature, the 5'8", 5'9" guys, it's going to be hard to find a big pool of those smaller guys who run, that 4.3 time. And so that 6 foot, 5'11" to 6'2" mold is something that's starting to become really appealing to some people. Guys who can do it all and who are real versatile. And that's something I feel that this group features that I have right now. I have 6 guys who might not be the most dynamic in one specific trait, but, man, they can do it all. They play across the board. They all play slot. They all play wide out. They're all shifty enough to make a guy miss. They're fast enough to be able to stretch the field. And that's a big blessing for me. And so really what I'm looking for is not so much one type of receiver. I just understand skill set that each type of receiver may bring. And if I feel that, they're going to be of value to this core and to this offense, then I'm going to do everything I can to get those guys. So I know it's kind of a broad answer, but it's true, in my regard. So
the schedules are certainly tough, and BYU opens with 4 Power 5 opponents. Do you have to recruit in a different way to be able to handle these schedules, or do you bring in the same guys and hope that you can meet the challenge of the schedule?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think a lot of that is position specific, and that's kind of what I went. Going back to my guys, if we're speaking of my receiving group, which is what I think your question was. They can all play against the best, man. They can, and I have guys who will be able to run step by step with those corners, and then I have guys who will just be able to break them off with their savviness and the way they run their routes. You know what I mean? And so I might not be able to line up and win a foot race versus every single guy. I think there's a couple I have that would be able to hold their ground, but every guy has their own strengths, and so yes, I do believe we have the guys that can line up and go toe to toe with those guys, and I feel confident in our ability to produce against, those big teams. So,
BYU wide receivers coach Fesi Sitake with us on BYU Sports Nation. Let's talk about some of your core guys joining Aleva Hifo in the convo. Dax Milne, Neil Pau, Gunnar Romney, Talon Shumway, Micah Simon. Which of your group individually improved the most, or maybe surprised you the most in terms of their improvement in spring football?
That's a hard one. In terms of improvement, I know you guys probably don't like broad answers, but I sincerely feel every guy had such a good spring and took a huge step forward. Now, Gunnar Romney was a big improvement just because there were a lot of question marks about him, and his health, and he wasn't able to consistently play throughout the fall. And so there were a lot of question marks about him, and I think he had a great spring, and I'm super proud of the steps he took forward. Guys like Talon Shumway, who have always been what he's been, had a great spring. He's the same consistent guy who just plays his butt off, and glad to have a guy like him. Dax, who earned a scholarship, took a huge step forward. Micah had a great spring, and Neil had a wonderful spring. So all those guys really super happy with the way they played, and I felt they were a strong suit of the team this year, just in terms of how they played and their availability and durability and all that stuff.
Is Jackson McChesney going to be a running back or a receiver or both?
We have him slotted as a running back right now with the ability to, flex out and like he did in high school and catch a bubble screen or a slant or be able to run by a linebacker if they end up going to man-to-man coverage. So he's pretty versatile, but I think we're slotting him at the running back spot.
Is that the case as well with Luke Andrada, the speedster?
Yeah, that's the plan. He's still a little bit more in question in terms of kind of where we put him, but that's the nice thing is not just because we're not sure what he can do, it's more what the best fit's going to be. And so right now, we're kind of still unsure, but it's definitely between those two, though.
Wide receivers coach Fesi Sitake on BYU Sports Nation, part of a loaded Friday show. We've talked a lot about the first 4 games recently on the program, Fesi, with Utah, at Tennessee, and then coming home to USC and Washington. And we're trying to manage expectations, but it's hard not to have the blue goggles on as well for all 4 of those big-name opponents. What do you think of the first 4 games for BYU, and how do you manage your expectations in that regard?
I love it, man. I'm so excited, and I think one of the pitfalls, whether as coaches, as fans, as players, is you hear a program's name, and the first thing you do is you string together all of the successes they've had over who knows how long, right? It could be a century or the past decade or, what's most recent. So, and when you do that, you can create this false sense of, you can create an insecurity that maybe you don't match up to these guys or whatever it is. But, man, we are so excited about our team and what we have coming back. And if we can go in and beat Wisconsin and Camp Randall, and we can go in and punch Utah in the mouth for, unfortunately, only 3 quarters instead of 4, right? But those are things, flashes that tell us it doesn't matter who we line up against. If we play our game and we just think about us and what we have now, then we can beat anyone. So I really am genuinely excited. I know the boys are, and we're ready for it. We're ready for the first game, despite what anyone else thinks. So.
I'm very excited about the first game, Utah. The fact that Utah is first, to me, is the best possible place for them. I know last is kind of traditional, but there's no conference championship to play for. Plus, you might be banged up or whatever. I love it as the first game. How do you feel about it as the first game?
I'm great with it. Yeah, first game, honestly, first game or last game. Like, you guys probably look into it a little bit more, rightfully so. But man, I don't care when we play them. It could be game 4, game 7, game 9. Like, we got to play those guys, and no matter what time of the year it is, we got to be ready for it. And so the fact that it's the first game this year is really exciting, just because we got a lot of questions to answer and things to figure out about ourselves, and what better opponent to do that against than Utah. So we know it's going to be a challenge and a battle, but we're ready for it and we're excited.
Fesi, you were a Salt Lake County native guy, grew up Hillcrest Husky, playing against Jarom Jordan's Copper Hills Grizzlies, and in that area where it's kind of a pure mix of BYU and Utah fans, where were your allegiances when you were a kid growing up?
So it was all wherever my family was, right? So growing up, I was a diehard BYU fan, man. I was at every game and every camp, and because that's where Kalani and many of the relatives played. But the second Kalani went to Utah, I became a Utah fan, and that was right after my high school years. So it was a little bit different part of my life, but I was a big Utah fan just because of him. So loyalty kind of overrode everything, but obviously I'm a BYU guy through and through. So that's where my allegiances were growing up most of the time.
Now that Kalani's here, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You just followed Kalani, right? Yeah. Love it.
Fesi, congratulations on surviving the hygiene test. Miracles still happen.
You don't stink.
Yeah, you definitely do not.
No, not at all. I take pride in my hygiene.
Great to talk to you, man. Have a great weekend, and good luck on the recruiting trail.
Okay, I appreciate you guys. Take care, man.